Hello, my name is Julian Wright-Wetta, and I'll be presenting my honors thesis, Long-Term Avian Responses to Drought and Urbanization in Northern California. This work was done with my advisor, Professor Rodolfo D'Urso, and my mentor, Dr. Tyler McFadden. North America has lost 3 billion birds since 1970, which represents a striking 29% net decline in abundance. This decline has and will affect human well-being, as birds provide agricultural pest control and pollination, billions of dollars in American ecotourism, and great intrinsic value as a significant aspect of our global biodiversity. Multiple studies have linked this decline to many interacting threats. For my thesis, I focused on the impact of climate change-induced drought, urbanization, and their interaction on local bird communities. In this example bird community, I hypothesized that these threats and more will lead to shifting bird populations depending on the suitability of their habitat. Here, golden birds appear to decline primarily in urban areas, while bluebirds appear to increase in the same areas. To disentangle this web, I set out with a few project aims. For each common Northern California species, I asked, what is their population trend over the last 31 years? Does drought impact their occurrence? And if so, what timescale has the greatest effect? How does urbanization affect their population trend? To answer the first two questions, I focused on Stanford's Jasper Ridge Biological Preserve, shown here. But first, I must recognize that while the preserve was established in 1973, it has been a home for the Muwekma people for millennia. And myself, and I believe all of you, owe them a debt of great gratitude for their stewardship. In 1989, 6 sectors of the preserve were established and surveyed monthly along a set trail. All birds seen or heard were counted during these surveys. After accounting for seasonality, observer bias, and sector of the preserve, I was able to discover 26 significant population trends. On the y-axis, we have the different species, and then on the x-axis, we have the percent change in abundance since 1989. The dots represent the mean, and the bars represent the 95% credible integral. To start on the bright side, all increasing species are cavity nesters, meaning that they use old holes constructed by woodpeckers in dead trees to raise their young. Since Jasper Ridge limits dead tree removal, the preserve's protected status may be helping some species. Additionally, while a couple species could not be modeled, the American crow and the wild turkey colonized Jasper Ridge during the 30-year timeframe. Though it's quite clear that the majority of species are decreasing, some of them have even disappeared completely from the preserve, like the northern mockingbird. And among the decreasing species are a lot of species that only live in California or the West Coast. So clearly, land protection alone will not save every species. However, analyzing population trends, it tells you what's going on, but it doesn't get at the drivers of what's going on. Therefore, I also analyzed the same data set for the effect of drought over multiple timescales. Here, each column is a different model that analyzes a different time interval of drought values that were averaged. So in this first column, it's a year of drought values. The next one, it's 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and 5 years. So the red grids represent an area where drought over that time scale had a significant negative effect on this species' probability of occurrence. Blue grids, on the other hand, represent a significant positive increase in that species occurrence. Ultimately, over half of the 98 studied species at Jasper Ridge were impacted by drought over one of the 5 timescales. Additionally, the timescale of drought studied heavily impacts which species are affected by drought. For example, we have like the California quail here, which is negatively affected by only shorter timescales, while we have other species like the white-breasted nuthatch that's only affected by longer drought averages. So while these findings clearly demonstrate that climate change-induced drought will impact many species quite dramatically, some of the results did not correlate with the population trends that I found. So I believe that drought is only one piece of the puzzle. Therefore, I also analyzed the effect of urbanization by resurveying many points in natural areas and urban areas after 29 years. To do this, I looked at a previous study. And so a biology PhD student, Robert Blair, surveyed 6 locations, lettered here. And at each location, there are 16 points. In the summer of 1992, Blair surveyed all of these points 6 times. To do the same survey effort, I did the same thing in the summer of 2021. And I'll tell you, so this study truly captured the full gradient of urbanization. Over here in A, I would literally be surveying like rolling oak forest one morning, like over here in Jasper Ridge. And then the next morning, I'd be over here on University Avenue surveying the sidewalk next to the Apple store. So in each of these surveys, all birds seen or heard less than 50 meters away were counted. And their distance was also recorded. And I use this to determine the density of each species in each survey and also account for things like observer variation. Ultimately, 45% of studied species shifted their occurrence across a gradient of urbanization. So in these graphs, the 1992 distribution is in cyan, while the 2021 distribution is in yellow. On the x-axis, the urban index ranges from complete canopy cover to heavily developed commercial districts. As you can see, some species, like the mourning dove, decreased dramatically in urban areas while persisting in natural ones. On the flip side, the Bewick's wren increased in urban areas while remaining roughly the same in natural ones. Additionally, the wren still preferred natural areas even after 29 years. In conclusion, 32% of species at Jasper Ridge declined, exemplifying that land preservation alone will not solve the biodiversity crisis. Limitations on dead tree removal at Jasper Ridge, though, likely helped cavity nesters. And this is a crucial point, as Stanford attempts to reduce fire risk across its lands while preserving its biodiversity. Global carbon emissions must be controlled to prevent more intense California drought and likely massive avian community turnover. Urbanization has accelerated many bird population trends that were observed in preserved areas. And one thing to note is that even though a lot of preserved areas still contained a full range of biodiversity, still many of the species declined in those areas. So places like Jasper Ridge clearly have a lot of value because they protect species from urbanization, but species-specific conservation is necessary as many of these species are still declining even after land preservation. And this is true for many species that are quite iconic. like our state bird, the California quail. Thank you so much for your time.